you said a term earlier, and again, back to 101, you said alkaloid, and I want
Right.
to interweave some of these terms in through our conversation.
Sure.
Would you speak to some of the chemical aspects of what you do?
Alkaloids are a class of chemicals that have a similar structure, which contains nitrogen. They are very biodynamic in the human body, but they cause some effects. Caffeine is an alkaloid. Strychnine is an alkaloid. Uh, Ayahuasca is based on alkaloids. And the reason they're so well known and studied, even though there's a lot more to learn, is they persist. When we went back and looked at the ayahuasca that Spruce collected in the Amazon over 100 years ago, they were still active. When we looked at the curare collections of Waterton from British Guiana over 150 years ago, they were still toxic. So this is why alkaloids are a mainstay of their medicine and a mainstay of our medicine, because we're able to collect them. And there's things in the Amazon which are much more ephemeral. For example, I could take you into the jungle and slash the bark of a croton tree with my machete, and the sap would come out red, and then it would turn orange, and then it would turn yellow, and then it would turn white. You know, there's some wild ass chemistry going on there. Okay. So a group called Napo Pharmaceuticals has developed a new drug for AIDS-related diarrhea based on this compound, because the indigenous peoples in the Western Amazon are using this for diarrhea and other problems.
But there's so much of what you talk about. So here's the when we're staying on chemicals, of course, I want to talk about Western medicine and set up a bit of a discussion between Western medicine and more indigenous
Mm-hmm.
medicines.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me like what Westerners tend to do is we want to go down to the forests and extract and bring things back. So we're
Right.
miners, right? We mine the territory and bring it back over here. It
Right.
it it seems like everything would be better, right? If we could use that term, if we would learn from the relationship that the indigenous folks have with nature, plants, and I mean, although that cat's probably out of the bag. So I'm sure that's ultimately incredibly frustrating for you to be over here, over there, and the culture shock that comes up as a result.
I think part of the challenges of this type of work, when you're working with other cultures, whether it's indigenous peoples in the Amazon or wine peasants in France, is to be able to go back and forth and be at home in both. And yeah, I mean, I wish that everybody who had a problem or wanted to experience it could go to the Amazon and take ayahuasca in a completely traditional setting, but the demand's too great.
Right.
You know, you look at Huautla, the center of the mushroom cults, and you see all these gringos walking around with plants of gods going, now I want to try this, now I want to try this, now I want to try this. That's not exactly honoring the sacred, but you have to understand and respect their need for knowledge or healing, because Western medicine or Western spirituality
Yep.
is not meeting their needs. There was a tweet the other day by a veteran who said, how do we get people back in the church? And I said, entheogens, right? Which
Yes.
which fits in with Brian's thesis. And there was a great quote from a guy, an anthropologist who worked with the Native American church, and he said, the Indian goes into his teepee, no, the white man goes into his church and talks about Jesus. The Indian goes into his teepee, takes peyote, and talks to Jesus.
Yeah. Why don't we
Okay,
have religious
so
experience?
right, and of course, the point of Brian's wonderful book, The Immortality Key, is we've lost that was in Christianity,
Yes.
right? And that when you're not taking ergot with the little wafer, you're not seeing the blood on the line. Okay, and but you know, I don't want to pick on Christianity here. Since Brian's book came out, they found marijuana on an altar near Jerusalem, so that the Jews were using these mind-altering substances as well. Now, when you find a marijuana on one altar in Israel, or when you find ergot in one chalice in Catalonia, does not mean that, you know, at the Last Supper,
Right.
that the Holy Grail was full of ergot. But I just reviewed Brian's book, and I pointed out, if this is true, then the only way to prove this is to search for the Holy Grail, which is the Holy Grail.
Carl
Right?
Ruck
Of
has a
course,
different theory. Carl Ruck's talking about all the mushrooms that were in all those, all he's got Christ or Christ-like figures doing communion with mushrooms, and the fly agaric is the
right. Well, you know, people said Ruck's thesis would never be tested, and then Brian came up with the chalice,
it's radical.
right? So Ruck is living the good life, and
He
that
is.
all these people who dismissed him, and he proved to be an ethnobotanical Cassandra.
He's humble about it too. He's got a nice kind of humility. When I was really propping him up and saying, "Man, you're right," and he's like, it's really nice to see.
Well, he's had a long time to digest it. I only met him once at the inauguration of the Watson Library at Harvard, and he struck me as a brilliant guy, and time has proven him right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to live long enough to see that when everybody said you were full of shit, they were wrong and you were right.